The Hill wrote a shockingly fair piece about the rise of right-leaning art in pop culture. I know, it's kind of a man bites dog story when the press does its job, but that's the world we live in. The piece talks about Sound of Freedom, Try That in a Small Town, Men North of Richmond. All three of those shattered expectations, drew lots and lots of eyeballs or downloads, and a lot of that attention came from red state types, no doubt. By the way, left unsaid in the story is Tom MacDonald's recent hits, including American Flags and Your America. But The Hill, to its credit, noticed the trend and recorded it fairly. Here's part of that conversation. Hollywood has long been synonymous with progressive media. Republicans have scoffed at the powerful microphone that they believe liberal elites hold in television, film, and music. And as the country becomes increasingly polarized, conservatives are coalescing to amplify their own voices. Again, that's a pretty fair take, but the article ends on a note I thought was really important, and I want to share it verbatim here. It's too soon to tell whether these recent hits represent the start of a larger divide in entertainment, or if the summer of 2023 turns out to be a one-hit wonder for conservative pop culture. Pretty snazzy phrasing, by the way, so kudos to the reporter who put it together. But it is a good question, but I think in a way we have our answer already. But the trick to this is you have to add an asterisk to the word conservative in this whole conversation. Yeah, the content we're talking about is right-leaning, no doubt, but not always. And the people creating it, again, not always right of center. Americans were sick of the corrupt elites. And that's a group that includes Hollywood, academia, the media, of course the government, and even the CDC. Look at some of the things they've said about the pandemic in recent months. But they're mostly progressives, and then, that's part of the reason why the conservative label has been sticking so well. But I think the better word here, at least for this cultural revolution, and I think it is populist. Sounds like Trump, right? But let's not go there. It is a full-scale attack on the elites. It's why our cultural institutions, like the press, they do everything possible to ignore this or to attack it. That's why the Hill piece in and of itself was so important. It was something different, something respectful, something accurate and honest. Good for them. But the guy behind that Richmond song from Virginia, Oliver Anthony, well, he doesn't want to be labeled as a conservative. He recently gave an interview, or I think he just maybe shared something on social media. I'm getting them all blurred these days, but he threw cold water on the fact that the right is embracing him. He also attacked the GOP for bringing up his song during the GOP presidential debate. He's an everyman, at least he wants to be, and he's singing about his friends and neighbors, good people. They're not Republicans necessarily. They certainly could be. They're just working hard, and they're sick and tired of being abused by the elites. High taxes, we must control you, you will eat bugs and like it. No more ceiling fans or gas stoves for you. That's what we're talking about here. And again, you can see why it leans to the right, but it's not necessarily a conservative issue. And we've been seeing some other evidence of this cultural revolution in recent months. I mean, look at Top Gun Maverick. Came out last year, huge hit. It was woke-free. I think that's part of it. The elites love woke. But also, it was a celebration of talent and ability. Those Top Gun pilots were the best of the best. Now, identity politics, which the elites love, it's not about the best of the best. It's about what's your skin color, are you a victim, and we're going to rank you by that. The elites hate the meritocracy, and it shows. Now, we also have populist comedians. You think about Tim Dillon, Ryan Long, Andrew Schultz, Tyler Fisher, Chrissy Mayer. They're all doing really well online, on podcasts, of course, on stand-up stages. They're drawing a crowd. And they don't get any mainstream help at all. Nothing. Not a lick. They've got songs like Boycott Target, Let's Go Brandon. They're about maybe, I guess, last year or so. But, they raised up the music charts, just like hits by, Taylor Swift. And they mock the elites, too. They mock the elites for forcing the country to embrace some pretty extreme cultural shifts that either we're not ready for or maybe aren't good for the culture at large. That's their opinion, and they're entitled to it. Meanwhile, I have cancel culture victims like Morgan Wallen and Louis C.K., and they are doing A-OK. Wallen is one of the biggest names in country right now, and that's, of course, despite Country Music Inc. trying to cancel him last year. He said the N-word. It was caught on tape. It was a private moment, but he didn't use it against a black person. He just said the word. Again, we know the toxicity of the word. I'm not defending the word, but for that act, his career almost collapsed. And Louis C.K. is a different story because he really did earn his cancel culture stripes. He behaved very badly. He exposed himself sexually to multiple women, and his career collapsed as well. But you know what? I think the public at large, or at least his fans, thought, all right, he's suffered. He's suffered a lot. He's been embarrassed. He's lost millions of dollars. His Hollywood career for now seems over, and we're going to forgive him. We're going to go watch him on stage, and they did that en masse. Matter of fact, he sold out Madison Square Garden earlier this year. That's something most comedians will never, ever do. Now, again, he's not aggressively political, Louis C.K. He's also pretty left of center. He was one of the few guys who called out Trump as Hitler back in the day. That was the early days when calling out Trump as Hitler was cool and fun and novel and distinct. A lot of comedians are also following the Louis C.K. path where they're not in the mainstream, they're not supported by the mainstream, but they're just doing it themselves. They're self-producing. They're putting out their comedy specials, they're assembling them, editing them, putting them out to the public, either through their websites, maybe through their email addresses, kind of sending the word that way, or just putting them on YouTube or Rumble or other platforms and saying, hey, come see it. It's free, but, of course, we'll get some ad revenue from that and monetize it too. And then also, I'll just put my brand out there. If you think I'm funny, you might want to see me on stage. It's a great idea, and it's working very well. And of course, part of that is there are no strings. There's no Netflix executive saying, you need to take out this joke, or anyone up high up and above saying you need to kind of maybe rail in this humor or double down on this. No, they call the shots. And that's one of the main reasons why they're doing this. And again, they do it and they smite the elites. Think about Tyler Fisher attacking COVID mania. Also, Jim Brewer has done just that. Part of the appeal is that sense of freedom. And that's what Tucker Carlson has, unexpectedly, of course. He was fired from Fox a few months ago, and now he's doing just fine, apparently. He's got a show that exists on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, which always reminds me of how we used to identify Prince. And his two-part interview with Ice Cube, by the way, it just absolutely rocked the news cycle, had a lot of commentary around it, drew a lot of eyeballs, of course. It was certainly more interesting, more engaging than most celebrity chats.
Why wouldn't you take the vax? You had a direct order to take it. You were told to take it.
Yeah, I'm not real good with direct orders, but on a whole nother note,
but it was a command. I'm sorry, they told you. They couldn't have been clearer about it.
Yeah, it was pretty clear. Did you take it?
Of course not.
Yeah, no. It wasn't ready. It was 6 month, kind of rush job. And I didn't feel safe.
And then we have Angel Studios, which focuses on uplifting faith-friendly stories. How much we need those these days. And they delivered not one but 2 hits this year. And of course, they only have 2 films, and they're 2 for 2, not a bad batting average. Sound of Freedom was a massive hit. We all know about that. But also, His Only Son made back its money and then some. Both are films that the elites didn't want to put out there. His Only Son is a religious film, and most studios don't like that overtly religious theme. And of course, Disney had Sound of Freedom. They had it on their shelf for 5 years before they got rid of it. They wanted no part of it. Well, I think that's biting them on the buttocks as we speak. And other stars are doing it too, and yet their fame is different now. But they're similarly smashing the elites. Look at Russell Brand. He's not a movie star anymore, and it makes me a little sad because I think he's very good on screen. He was great in Get Him to the Greek. If you haven't seen that recently or you saw it a while ago, definitely worth a rewatch. It's excellent. But he's got a YouTube channel with 6.5 million followers. It's huge. And every time he puts out a video, often attacking the elites, it draws a lot of attention, a lot of eyeballs. Now, he's a guy who leans to the left. I don't even know where to put him now. I guess he kind of crosses different categories. But he used to be a socialist for sure. But his voice speaks for millions of people, disaffected souls who see politicians who are not working for their best interests. Could that be more obvious? And of course, we can't forget the biggest name in podcasting. He's an absolute populist, no question about it. And he says what he thinks, even if it goes against the groupthink. That's, of course, Joe Rogan. They tried to cancel him a year or so ago, but it didn't work. His critics call him far-right, anti-all-right, whatever name they want to kind of affix to him. It's ridiculous. It doesn't back up by the facts. He's not an alt-right guy. He's not a conservative. He's not Republican. I don't even think he leans to the right. Maybe center-left would be a good description for him, but whatever they're trying to attack him on, it's not working. And while the media lead are trying to pretend that President Biden has his full faculties at 80, Rogan is telling it like it is. He sees what he sees. He hears what he hears. And so do we. And that's why we connect with him. We're not listening to the elites. We're listening to Joe Rogan. And all this is happening while pop culture is partly in a tailspin. You've got films like The Flash, Haunted Mansion, and Blue Beetle. They're all collapsing at the box office. They should have been all hits, right? Existing properties, superhero films, big budgets, big stars. Nope, not remotely happening. Then you got a film like Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I mean, that's guaranteed to make money. It's why they made it. You don't put a guy in his late 70s into an action movie thinking it's going to collapse on screen financially, but that's exactly what it did. It's on track to lose a reported $100 million, maybe more, maybe less, but that's a lot of money to lose on a can't-miss franchise. Well, it missed, and it missed by a lot. Then you have streaming platforms which are just hemorrhaging money right now. It's ridiculous. I mean, even Disney Plus, where's the profitability there? I think things will get worse as the competition gets even stricter. I just don't know where things are going to go right now. And of course, all this leads into the strikes. You've got 2 Hollywood strikes right now. There's no end in sight, that's for sure. They are punishing Hollywood. They're punishing the actors and writers who are not collecting paychecks. At some point, we will see a pause in some of the content potentially because there's nothing happening, nothing being made at the moment. This is not a good time for Hollywood. And yet you have this populism bubbling up around the edges outside the mainstream, but it's getting mainstream attention. It's a really important moment in the culture. Now, Tim Dillon, who I mentioned before, had some great commentary. He was talking about his show, the Hollywood strikes, and what's going on in the industry. And he said, look at what I do and look at what Hollywood does. I put on a video podcast. It's up on YouTube. It gets hundreds of thousands of views. And we do it on a pretty streamlined budget. Now compare that to CNN and all the bells and whistles and all the money they give to the anchors and all the graphics that they show. Everything you see on screen on CNN costs a lot of money. And yet, eyeball-wise, is it much more than a Tim Dillon podcast? Not really. The economic model is favoring Tim Dillon, and it's hurting CNN. You don't think that's going to shake out at some point? I know personally, I spend half the night watching cooking videos. I don't watch Food Network. I watch Sam the Cooking Guy. He's funny. He's interesting. His recipes are solid. And why would I watch something else? And I guarantee that Sam's budget is far, far less than a Food Channel network or any other slickly produced show out there. I don't need that. I just want Sam. And I'm sure I'm not alone. He's got a lot of subscribers. That's what we're seeing in the marketplace right now. Now, I'm not saying Sam is a populist, but just an example of how the economics are working against Hollywood Inc. Dillon has another advantage over the mainstream, and so does Joe Rogan, and so do a lot of the people that I just mentioned. He can say mostly what he wants. Now, I get it. There are some censorship issues at play. I don't want to diminish that. But he can basically rail against any group, any individual, any subject, and it's just whatever he pleases. He's not, beholden to corporate sponsors like an NBC program. He's not thinking about the gatekeepers. He doesn't have an editor who's saying, you can do this, but not that. He says what he wants. He's genuine. He's authentic. That matters, especially in our increasingly artificial world. Have you seen some influencers? I think they use filters. It's not exactly, the image they're putting out there is not exactly reality. And for all those reasons, these authentic voices, true and pure and unfiltered, they matter. They connect with us. They are populist to the core, and they often smash the elites. It does matter. Now, we have, of course, conservative influencers who are spreading the word about rich men and Try That in a Small Town and Sound of Freedom. They do move the needle for sure. That Men North of Richmond song is the perfect message for the modern right. even though it's not political, even though it's not meant to be a GOP cudgel. So right-leaning influencers are just helping spread the word. And that matters too, because the mainstream media is not going to spread the word for them. You know, if Michael Moore has a movie coming out in a couple of months, you will see tons and tons of stories about him, about his body of work, about the new film, all the different ways they'll spread the word and share the message for free. That's just the press writing stories. That's not a marketing machine. But when a country superstar who comes out of the blue like an Oliver Anthony, he won't get press in the same way. That's for sure. And when the press does come around to him, it's often going to be negative. And again, that negative reaction is the elites attacking him, and it's the public saying, screw you to the elites. We're going to buy what we want to buy. And if it happens to be a redheaded person from Virginia who has no fame, no record label, no marketing team, nothing, yeah, we're going to do it because we like what he has to say. It's real. One of the things that the Hill column noted was that conservatives have been slow to embrace pop culture in general, which is completely true. And they've also been reticent to support right-leaning art when it does pop up in the marketplace. I think my fellow conservatives for a long time basically ignored Andrew Breitbart's critical message, politics is downstream of culture. But that's no longer the case. We've got the Daily Wire going Hollywood. Blaze TV is producing some content that's certainly Hollywood-based, or at least it has that feel. It's comedy, it's podcasting, it's movies, things like that. I mean, what's the difference between the two? Not really much, just a little bit of budget and where the source of it is. In recent years, we've had some really great right-leaning art, and it didn't get the support, didn't get the love that you would think it might. I'm talking about No Safe Spaces, an excellent movie from 2019 that talked about free speech attacks on college campuses, but also Richard Jewell, the Clint Eastwood movie from a few years ago. It was excoriating media bias and attacking the FBI for its nefarious behavior with Richard Jewell, as an infamous case that those particular films didn't do well. I think No Safe Space did fine based on its very small budget, but just generally speaking, that should have been a hit. Should have been a mainstream hit, and it wasn't. But populist pop culture content, that's another story. Doesn't come with partisan labels, and it draws some support from the left, which is great. You know, who isn't exhausted by the elites who tell us to mask up while going mask-free right before our eyes?
Wine, put on your mask when you're inside a facility. It could be a robot from a Star Wars trilogy. It's XC.
I will never forget that cringeworthy song from The Tonight Show. Never. You need to apologize, Jimmy Fallon. That's the success we'll see more of in the months and years to come. Art that crosses ideological borders and draws support from a growing number of fed-up Americans, left, center, and especially the right.